Hello everyone, wishing you all a gentle and warm day. The previous episode ended with a faint glimmer of hope when a poor young man unexpectedly discovered something in the cold stream. Meanwhile, the forensic results left everyone shattered. It was Hoai Ca's blood. Tony still longs for his mother. Her foster mother broke down in tears, and Hung could only run into the unknown. And in this episode, the criminal who attacked her has finally been caught. Hoai Ca has regained consciousness, but her past is now nothing but a terrifying blank. Lyhoaica Episode 12. Stay tuned, everyone. The midday sun streamed through the gaps in the leaves, casting dappled golden patches on the soft, damp earth. A gentle breeze rustled through the treetops, carrying the sounds of forest birds and the earthy scent of post-rain soil. Deep in the forest, a hunched figure moved through thick underbrush, bare feet wrapped in an old sarong, hands gripping a worn-handled machete. It was the boy's mother, out gathering medicinal herbs. She wasn't a healer, nor did she possess any formal medical knowledge, but after a lifetime in the forest, she knew which leaves could stop bleeding, which barks could fight infection, and which roots might call a soul back from the edge. Her hands moved quickly. Some plants grew low to the ground. She knelt to pull them up. Others clung to rocky slopes. She climbed without hesitation, gripping bamboo roots for balance. All that mattered to her was gathering enough leaves, enough roots, enough medicine to save the girl lying unconscious in her home, nameless, alone, with not a word left behind. When the cloth bag on her back was full, she turned for home, soaked in sweat, but eyes still shining. Entering the house, she saw her son still seated beside the stranger, the girl they had pulled back from the brink of death. The mother let out a quiet sigh, set the herbs down, and said gently, "Take these branches and chop them into pieces. Wash the leaves, I'll boil them for a tonic. These others I'll set aside to grind into a poultice for the wound on her head." The boy nodded and hurried to work. Each chop of the knife split a branch, releasing the faint, clean scent of sap. Meanwhile, his mother washed the leaves and added them to a pot of boiling water, letting it reduce to a dark, potent brew. Her hands were quick, but lightly trembling from fatigue and from worrying. The firelight flickered across her face, aged, but her eyes still glowed. Glowed with care, and with a quiet faith that this girl would survive. Once the decoction had boiled down, she poured it into a bowl and let it cool. Turning to her son, she spoke softly, gently. "Lift her head, let me give her the medicine." The boy carefully supported Hoai Ca's shoulders and head. Her hair was wet, strands stuck to her cheeks. Her breath was faint, her chest rising and falling so lightly it seemed like it could stop at any moment. The mother sat at the edge of the bed, her hands shaking as she spooned the medicine into her mouth. Each spoonful held the weight of the world. Hoai Ca swallowed slowly, with difficulty, but she still had reflexes. "Good girl, that's good, hang in there," the woman murmured, as if soothing her own heart. Then she took the ground herbs and gently applied them to the gashes on Hoai Ca's forehead and temple, where dried blood had matted her hair. She wrapped a clean white bandage around the girl's head, with the tenderness of a mother tending her own child. Outside, mist began to settle, the cold crept deeper into the bones. But inside that humble home, warmth remained. The warmth of human kindness. Hoai Ca still lay there, eyes closed, motionless, as if something unseen was holding her between life and death. But then her fingers twitched, just once, then stillness again. The boy and his mother looked at each other. No words were spoken. But in their hearts, they were praying for a small miracle, that she would open her eyes, just once. Today marks the third day since the young man brought Hoai Ca home. Everything in the small house has remained utterly still. Only the soft bubbling of herbal medicine on the stove, the gentle swish of a palm fan, and the girl's faint breathing offered any sign that she was still alive, though still unconscious, this morning. She swallowed more easily than the day before, no longer choking on each sip of milk like she had the 2 days prior. The young man and his mother were overjoyed, though their joy was small, fragile, like sunlight filtering through leaves in a shadowy forest. Hoai Ca's face was no longer swollen, and the bruises on her cheeks had faded slightly. But her head was still inflamed, bruised, and swollen. Most likely, that was the injury keeping her from waking. Each time the mother wiped her forehead, she furrowed her brow and sighed softly to herself. She knew the remedy she applied was powerful. It had saved many in the village before. But with this girl, she sensed something different. Not just physical wounds, but a burdened spirit, a deep injustice, a quiet desperation. She placed her calloused hand gently on the girl's forehead. Her eyes heavy with sorrow. Hang in there, child. Poor girl, we don't even know where you came from, and yet here you are, broken like this. The boy stood behind her in silence for a long time. Then he finally spoke, voice slow, but resolute. Mother, maybe we should bring in a doctor. I know not taking her to the hospital isn't right. But we just don't have the means. He left the sentence hanging. They both knew they were to poor, no money. No way of knowing where her family was, even if she were in a hospital. There would be no one to care for her. After thinking for a while, the mother shook her head. Bringing a doctor here still costs money. And right now, even borrowing from neighbors, no one dares lend. But looking at the girl fragile, alone, clinging to life, the mother couldn't turn away. She sighed and turned to her son. Let's sell some of the chickens, and the cow. If we get a good price, we'll sell that too. I'm not afraid to lose what we have. I'm only afraid that if we do nothing, it'll be too late. The boy nodded. His eyes were rimmed red. I'll find extra work. Once the doctor comes, I'll earn what we need to pay it back. Don't worry, Mum. We're saving a life. The mother said nothing more. She just gave her son's hand a firm squeeze, part agreement, part apology. The afternoon breeze slipped through a small window, rustling the worn curtain. In the shabby little home, the pot on the stove resumed its quiet, urgent boiling. Right now all hope lay in that faint breath, and in the quiet resolve of two people with nothing, except the unwillingness to turn their backs on life. The soft slap of sandals echoed from the dirt path at the end of the alley. The young man walked quickly, shielding the woman beside him, a doctor in her 40s, from the sun. In her hand swung an old, worn-out medical bag the color of gruel, swaying with each step. Sweat dotted her forehead, but her expression was calm, her eyes warm and full of experience. The moment they stepped into the yard, the boy's mother rushed out from the house. She wiped her hands hurriedly on the edge of her faded shirt, bowed her head, and said, "Thank you so much for coming. Please, take a look at the girl inside." I don't know what else to do." She didn't wait for a reply. Turning immediately, she led the way into the small room, where Hoai Ca lay silently, like a piece of driftwood washed ashore. The air was thick with the scent of herbal medicine, damp earth, and time itself. On Hoai Ca's face, the bruises had faded, but her head remained swollen, and her breathing was so faint it seemed ready to vanish. The doctor sat on the edge of the bed, quietly opened her bag, put on gloves, and began the examination. The atmosphere was tense, broken only by the rustling of gloves and the soft clink of metal instruments, sounds as light as breath. After a long moment of checking, the doctor finally looked up at the anxious mother and son standing nearby. Her heart is still beating, but very slowly. Pupil reflex is weak. There's significant swelling on her head, possibly indicating serious internal trauma, but it can't be confirmed by the naked eye. She needs to be taken to the hospital for imaging, brain scans, tests, as soon as possible. If this drags on, not only is her life at risk, even if she wakes up, she could lose her memory, or never recover fully. The mother lowered her head, clearly distressed. Her voice caught in her throat. Our family. We're very poor. We can't afford hospital bills, doctor. Is there anything you can do for her here? The doctor looked at her for a long moment, then slowly shook her head. Her voice remained gentle, but firm. I understand how much you care. And I truly respect that, but in this case, I can't do more. The injury is inside her head, invisible, only machines can detect it. If it were mild, she would have woken up by now. I'm afraid, this is not simple. A heavy silence fell over the old house. The mother could only look at Hoai Ca, eyes filled with anxious sorrow. The doctor stood, quietly packed her tools back into the bag, then softly added, I won't charge anything for today's visit. Consider it an act of kindness, but, if there's any way at all, please get her to a hospital. As soon as you can. The sound of footsteps faded. The gate closed behind her. Inside the house, the mother and son sat silently beside Hoai Ca's bed. Daylight slanted through the old thatched roof, casting shadows on her face, pale and bruised, still waiting to heal. An emergency meeting was underway in a closed room. The air felt thick and heavy. Files were scattered across the table, and the harsh overhead light cast sharp shadows on every face. The chief stood up abruptly, his voice cutting like a blade. The fingerprint analysis is back. The prints on both sticks match profiles in the criminal database. We have confirmed their identities, faces, and known hangouts. He threw 2 photos onto the table. Hung's face darkened. One of the men was someone he had noticed near the forest on the very first day of the investigation. The images have been sent to your phones. Begin the manhunt immediately. These are murder suspects. Do not let them escape. If the situation becomes difficult to control, report back to HQ at once. The entire unit is on standby. Hung clenched his fists and nodded firmly. The veins on his neck twitched. His blood surged. There was no room for delay. No room for failure. He and officer and quickly changed into plainclothers. Each carried a handgun, handcuffs, and a communication device. No unnecessary words. Their eyes said it all. They split up, each combing areas based on the suspect's known routines. Pool halls, internet cafes, narrow alleys behind the market. Locals mostly shook their heads. Haven't seen them in a long time. Time ticked on. Every second felt like a countdown on someone's life. Then, at a grimy roadside tea stall near an abandoned bus terminal, Hung stepped inside. The air reeked of cheap cigarettes, sweat, and stale breath, and there he was. A scruffy man with a low cap, eyes glued to his phone, but glancing around nervously. Hung discreetly pulled out his phone, typing quickly. Target confirmed. Request backup. Minutes later, and arrived, taking position across the street. Their eyes met, a nod brief, cold, and sharp as the pull of a trigger. Hung walked forward slowly, a cup in hand, pretending to take a call, but his eyes never left the target. Each step felt like crossing a live minefield. The photo, the face, a perfect match. One more step. The man looked up, their eyes locked. That moment was electric. Police, stay where you are, Hung shouted, lunging forward. Chairs crashed, glass shattered, the crowd screamed. The suspect jumped up, shoved Hung hard, and bolted. Hung gave chase instantly, pounding footsteps echoing through the alley. The man burst onto the street, but was already there, a quick, clean arm lock. The cold click of the cuffs snapped shut. Hung caught up, slamming him to the ground, eyes blazing red. He growled through clenched teeth. "What did you do to Hoai Ca? Speak." The man turned his face away, silent. Hung yanked him by the collar, shouting, "Is she still alive?" A flicker of panic crossed the suspect's eyes, but his lips stayed sealed. No confession, no answer. Just then, a police cruiser screeched to a stop at the curb. Doors flung open, backup officers jumped out and helped secure the prisoner. They shoved him into the back seat, head down, hands cuffed. Blood trickling from his cheek. Hung stood watching, fists clenched so tightly his nails dug into his skin. "I'll drag every word out of you, no matter what it takes." The interrogation room was heavy with tension, like a wire pulled taut. Dim yellow light spilled over the hollow face of the criminal sitting with his head bowed, hands cuffed in front of him. His eyes occasionally flicked upward, scanning every movement around him, as if still searching for a way out, even though he knew full well there was none. At first, he stuck to denial, his expression cold, his tone flat. "I don't know anything. You've got the wrong guy." But when the chief entered, slamming the case file down on the table, his voice was low, but so sharp it made the ear freeze. "Your fingerprints are on both iron rods. Hair samples also match the victim. What else do you have to say?" That was when the man who'd once been so brutal in the outside world began to crack. He started to tremble slightly, eyes fixed on the floor. Then suddenly he broke down, sobbing, pathetic, like a child who had committed a crime too great for his courage to face. He confessed. His voice was shaky, words broken, unclear whether it was fear or guilt that made them falter. He and another man, named Trung, were both hired muscle, men who had gotten into minor trouble before. The job had come from someone named Trung. Their task, deal with the girl, leave no trace. That day, the two of them drove a white car to the victim's house. The door was shut, no one was home. They waited in the car. When she returned and reached the gate, Trung jumped out first. He pulled a chloroform-soaked cloth from his pocket and struck swiftly. The girl struggled in panic for only a few seconds, then collapsed, unconscious. By this point, Hung's hands were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white, but he said nothing, just listened. The man continued. They shoved the girl into the car's trunk and drove to a secluded stretch of stream, far from any passerby. The location had been given by Trung in advance. They came prepared to black iron rods. As the girl began to gradually regain consciousness, the two men struck immediately. Blows rained down on her head, on her body. Blood poured from her forehead, trickling down into the shallow stream beneath her. She tried to fight back, in vain, to stun to even scream. Her body trembled slightly, then went still. Thinking she was dead, they lifted her and threw her into the stream, now murky from the previous night's rain. A chill shot through Hung's chest, down his spine. He stood frozen in the interrogation room, fingernails digging into his palms, eyes red with fury. He couldn't believe it, he couldn't even begin to imagine it. The girl he loved, so gentle, so kind, her smile, her eyes still etched into his memory, had been brutally attacked like that, no mercy, and no chance to cry for help. The criminal's words played out in Hung's mind like a vivid film, squeezing his chest with unbearable pain. Had he not been on duty, he might not have held back his rage. No one in the room spoke. The man lowered his head and continued. After the job was done, they called Trung, collected the rest of their payment, and disposed of the weapons. They thought that was the end of it. Silence. The man's eyes were sunken, dark with guilt and sleeplessness. From his shirt pocket, he took out a scrap of paper, a phone number and addresses for both Trung and Trung. He handed it over. His voice broke as he said, he had no idea who the girl was. He never imagined things would go this far, the chief nodded. The suspect was escorted back to his holding cell. He walked slowly, the gait of someone who had fallen deep into remorse. But with no path back, behind the one-way mirror, Hung still stood in silence. In his mind, he saw Hoai Ca clearly, her bright eyes, her gentle smile. Then suddenly swallowed by blood, water, and darkness. Never before had Hung longed so desperately to bring her back. It had been 5 days since Hoai Ca was taken in by the poor mother and son. Every evening, their small house by the stream quietly lit up for the sake of a girl who had yet to utter her name. There was nothing left to sell in the house now. Even their last chicken had been traded for tonic medicine and a clean set of clothes for her. For the past 2 days, the young man had silently gone to work at a construction site. His hands, once only used to weave fishing nets, now calloused from bricks and stone. His mother, as always, ventured into the forest each day to gather medicinal herbs, patiently boiling each pot, applying layers of leaves to the bruises on the girl's swollen forehead and cheeks, her heart never at ease. This morning, the swelling on her head had gone down, her skin less pale, her breathing more steady, and she managed to eat a few spoonfuls of thin porridge, small signs, but enough to fill the mother and son with joy. Still, no one knew who she was, where she came from, or whether anyone out there was searching for her. They couldn't keep her in these meager conditions forever, so the two decided that this afternoon, they would take her to the local clinic and notify the authorities, hoping someone might soon recognize her. But just as they were preparing a blanket and some clothes, something unexpected happened. The girl's fingers twitched slightly, and her eyelids began to flutter. Startled, the young man rushed to call his mother. They hurried to her side, and then, after a few strained attempts, Hoaica's eyes slowly opened, weak and confused. "Can you hear me? What's your name? Where do you live so we can take you home?" The mother's gentle voice trembled by her ear, full of concern and warmth. But Hoai Ca only gave a faint shake of the head. Her hazy eyes wandered over the unfamiliar faces. She wanted to speak, but her throat was parched, and her frail body couldn't muster a sound. She was awake, but her memory had not yet returned. The young man gently helped her sit up. The mother, eyes brimming with tears, spooned milk to her lips, joy and sorrow lighting up her gaze. Outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains. A new day was waiting, and the journey to bring Hoai Ca back had finally found its first glimmer of hope. Episode 12 closed with Hoaica's lost and distant gaze in an unfamiliar room. The criminal had been caught, but Hung still hadn't found her. She had awakened, yet no longer remembered who she was. Her memories had vanished, as if they had never existed. Can love reach the place where memories lie asleep? Is Hoai Ca still the same Hoai Ca as before? All will continue to unfold in episode 13. Stay tuned.
Tập 12 khép lại với ánh mắt lạc lõng của Hoai Ca trong căn phòng xa lạ. Tên tội phạm đã bị bắt, nhưng anh hùng vẫn chưa thể tìm ra Hoai Ca. Cô đã tỉnh nhưng không còn nhớ mình là ai, ký ức biến mất như chưa từng tồn tại. Liệu tình yêu có thể chạm đến nơi ký ức đang ngủ quên? Liệu Hoai Ca có còn là Hoai Ca của ngày trước? Tất cả sẽ tiếp tục hé mở trong tập 13. Mời cả nhà cùng đón xem.